Hi, I'm Kelly,
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jill.
and we're the Food Talk Trio. I'm so excited you're joining us. Welcome. This is our second show, and today we're going to be talking about what led us onto this amazing path of nutritional healing, and also a bit about spring cleansing and why is spring a good time to cleanse, and some really amazing simple ways that you can keep your body, your vehicle, so to speak, right, the most important vehicle you own, your body, how you can keep it running as clean as possible so that you can have more health, joy, radiance, all those amazing things. So actually, Jill, let's start with you. What compelled you on this journey of nutritional healing?
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I've told my story many times before, but I'll tell it again because it is interesting and it motivated me to go into this field. So, after I had my second child, I experienced some hormone imbalance. In particular, it was PMS, it wasn't so fun. And I really started to pay attention to my cycle. And I figured it out that it was a hormone imbalance. So basically, I went to my doctor, my physician, after a few months of tracking my symptoms. And I went to her and I told her what was going on. And basically, the only solution she had for me was a pharmaceutical. She just basically said, "Here's some Prozac." And I was like, "No, I'm not depressed. I have some imbalances, but it's a few days before my period." And she really had nothing else to suggest. It was just a pharmaceutical. There was no investigation, nothing. And I was so frustrated because I figured it out and I just needed somebody to guide me. And so I called her up later that day and I fired her. Actually, I literally called her and hung up. And it was very empowering. And later that day or that week, I found Bowman College, in fact, and that's where I went to nutrition school. And that's when I figured out what the underlying cause of my issue was. It wasn't just like knock off my symptoms, take some pills. It was like, let's just address getting those underlying things squared away. And it's been a work in progress. And I feel like I've really helped myself. And now I feel really able to help other folks who are in that same situation. So I'm grateful for that experience because it really helped me. That's my story.
Nice.
That's a
One of
beautiful
them.
story.
Yeah. So, what
Nice.
about you, Katie? What led you on this path?
Yeah, and mine, again, I am very grateful for the experience. It's like, without that, I really wouldn't have put me on the path of like, healing through foods. But it was my youngest daughter diagnosed with autism and really kind of diving into the gut brain connection and nutrition and, reducing inflammation. I really started to do a lot of research on glutamate and how that's being enriched in the food supply through the processing. And it turns out my daughter was extremely sensitive to glutamate, and a lot of us, have some sensitivity to that. And underlying, chronic inflammatory conditions really benefit by getting rid of this glutamate. So I established the READ program, which is Reduced Excitatory Diet program that really is about just healthy eating. And, I realized the benefits within me. She was, ended up getting off the spectrum. And it's just been an incredible journey. And like you said, it's been a work in progress, and evolving these new, pieces of information and incorporating them. And it's been fantastic. And again, I just am so grateful that something put me on this track of really looking at what am I eating. That's my story in a nutshell. How about you, Kelly?
Yeah, just that is amazing, by the way. What you're able to do for your daughter, and Jill, I just want to say I really resonate with what you're saying, because I got on the path of nutritional healing mostly for my husband, but the side effect of doing all this and learning all this is that I completely balanced my hormones when I wasn't even thinking about that. Like,
Hmm.
that wasn't even my goal. We were in a family emergency. And
Right.
the side effect was like, oh my gosh, my hormones completely balanced. And it's amazing. And pharmaceuticals don't balance your hormones. They do not. They cannot. It's not
Hmm.
possible. They can make adjustments, but to truly bring the body back to balance, this beautiful holistic, system, this amazing I don't know what you call it, this amazing love machine that we have. It's so complex, and for one thing to one pill to it's just a joke. I mean, it just seems so silly, right?
It was
Like,
crazy. Yeah, I was angry actually. But
Oh yeah,
it
I think
also
I think
got me.
anger definitely part
I
of the
Yeah, I
doing
was
it.
pissed off. I was
Yeah.
like, "What kind of doctor are you?
Yeah.
Like, this is just like a scam." I literally thought it was like a scam medicine. Like, you're not trained. But and ironically, my nutrition school, which is like a little school, really, the people there really helped me out. But
so cool.
the interesting thing for my path also that it wasn't just physiological. It was like I really took into my stress, how I thought about things, because how we think about things impacts our body, right? Our body believes what we tell it, or our mind believes what we tell it. So we
Yeah,
can cause a stress response just by thinking about something stressful.
it's
We
so
It's
true.
so true.
Yeah.
And when we were
I read a
talking,
statistic. There were some studies done on weight loss. I don't know if you've heard of this one. And they were doing just pure visualization. So no one was allowed to change anything.
Hmm.
They weren't allowed to, like, they couldn't exercise more. They they like it was that was the kind of control setting, is like, okay, you can't change anything. But what you're going to do is you're going to do these visualization exercises every single day, and you're going to imagine yourself lean and healthy and strong and fit and all these things. And just that alone, um, there was a 75% result in
Wow,
being able
that's
to lose weight just
amazing.
with the visualization. So that is huge. I mean, these are like, our minds are like our supercomputers, right? And
Hmm.
that's like running the show. Of course, our heart, right? Our heart is like the center of our emotions and love. And so it's like when you balance the heart with the mind, and you really visualize the future you want for your body, for yourself, in all ways. That's the only way to really have true transformation and true health, in my opinion. And it's
and that's
interesting
a good
because
lead in here for, cleansing, right? Because it's like,
Right.
cleansing thoughts. When we were talking about our favorite
yeah,
things,
Hmm.
it's a huge element. And of course, we talk about a lot of food, and we'll get into our favorite kind of detox and cleansing things with food. But cleansing thoughts is part of cleansing the body, because
Hmm.
the toxic thoughts can absolutely just spiral you out of control. When you took a look at anxiety, depression, and the
Hmm.
rate at which these things are increasing in our society, mental illness among our teens. And how do you get a teen who's just so consumed with their pain body and their negative thoughts to think better thoughts? And unfortunately, you struggle saying you can't force another person to think better, but what you can do is just keep modeling it and bringing more and more positive thoughts into this world, because a lot of people aren't.
yeah,
That's a
you're
good
Hmm.
place to
right.
start.
They're going to challenge that, because especially at the age of, where your daughter is, she's going to challenge that, and that makes it hard. You want to keep modeling that, but everything you model, she's going to try to rebel against, just because that's her job right now. But the fact that you are unwavering, that your love is unchanging, and that your modeling is, I mean, obviously we all lose our patience, but you're always coming back to that same beautiful uh pillar, that stronghold, that rock, right? And so eventually, when she comes out of this, that will be the rock that she stands on for
Hmm.
her whole
Yeah,
entire life, right?
certainly
So,
my
Yeah.
manifestation.
Yeah, so let's segue again, because those are such great points. Like, let's talk about why do we need to cleanse? Like, what is causing, if we're having a mind, body, soul approach to cleansing, where are those toxins coming in? Like, so we've identified that we can have toxic thoughts,
mhm,
toxic emotions
mhm,
that can cause a toxic burden.
mhm.
And then what else is there? So there's environmental toxins that we're exposed to, and then we have our own foods and other things that we're actually ingesting
Yeah.
that can cause, excuse me,
Before we
toxic
go
stuff.
to the environmental and food, I just want to kind of complete the picture, because a lot of people don't understand why. Like, so what if I have a negative thought, or so what if I have anxiety, as long as I'm eating healthy,
Okay, so
right?
let's go
But
down there. What happens
there's a
then?
physiological response. I mean, when you
Yeah.
have anxiety, your digestion, your motility literally shuts down. It literally stops.
Yep.
When you have this fight or flight experience, you can't digest anything. And that's a big problem, because if you have food sitting in your gut and you're not processing it and you don't have healthy motility, there's going to be putrefaction, there's going to be rot, there's going to be candida, all these unfavorable microorganisms. You're basically creating an environment for them, and you're secreting adrenaline, cortisol, these which is fine if you're
Stress. Yeah.
running and exercising,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're doing that all the time, those are going to also affect your digestive system. And um, yeah, we need all the digestive support we can get right now, because spring cleaning, cleansing, that starts in the gut. That's
Mm-hmm.
our first line of defense, right? When we're eating, we need to take advantage of those beautiful foods that give us all those nutrients and all those amazing cleansing powers and antioxidants and all those things with optimal digestion. Okay, so I've said enough, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure like I tied that part together. And before we move on to
Yeah, well, let's take that another step further. So when we're having stressful thoughts, that's our stress hormones are reacting. So you mentioned cortisol, adrenaline, and then our digestive stuff shuts down, and that impacts our blood sugar.
Yeah.
So those are our blood sugar hormones, our insulin and our pancreatic enzymes are influenced. So then you start to not digest, like you mentioned. And then the third thing that happens is the sex hormones are impacted, right? So then our hormones go crazy. That's when we're starting to have our PMS and low estrogen, low progesterone in particular, low progesterone and probably high estrogen. And so those three hormone systems are constantly triggering each other. So recognizing whichever one is your main culprit, getting off of that, and then all those other systems will balance out.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the
Hopefully.
environmental components, and so there's a huge slew, obviously, of toxins that we can be exposed to through our environment, food, and
Mm-hmm.
then you mentioned kind of the microbiome element. So these microbes are fermenting our foods, they're creating chemicals, and those can sometimes be overloading our cells or human cells, and those become toxins too. So it becomes, okay, how well is our body oiled, and we'll talk about the oiling, to get rid of these toxins. So it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a mass load sort of thing. The toxins that we are introduced to are incorporated into our body. How well is our body
Mm-hmm.
detoxing so that we're not constantly accumulating and almost at a deficit? And that's where people are starting to get
Exactly.
sick. The deficit is starting to
Yes.
gradually, zap their energy and take things where there's so much energy being focused on detoxifying these toxins that their quality of life is going down. And there's all sorts of categories here where, the healthier the individual, the better the body is oiled to be able to detoxify.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we talk about today will probably be hitting at different types of inflammatory conditions or health conditions where your body may not be oiled running smoothly enough to detoxify efficiently. And then what can you
Mm-hmm.
do in addition to help support that? Because usually if the balance is just great, you're not it's consuming or exposed to more toxins than you're detoxifying, things are okay. But it's really when that balance is upset and you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
ill or not optimal.
Right. I'll be right back.
yep,
I have to go get my charger.
no problem.
There you go.
We're good.
See,
Yeah,
it's all about balance and charge and energy.
totally. It's interesting because so I've been really getting into zeolite lately, mostly because I had a lot of mercury fillings removed from my mouth. I had all of them eventually removed, and I didn't go to a biocompatible dentist, where they do it right, because it was just so expensive and I had so many. So so I would like create this detox protocol and tape it to my fridge so that when I got home, I wasn't so like, because I Novocaine, I always do half the amount and it still affects I get brain fog from it, but also I think just the mass amounts of mercury coming into my system, like the floodgates are released when they're taking all that out, right? It's not,
Right.
yeah, it's not like that water thing's getting everything out. It's coming into my body. So I was like, okay, I got to do this ahead of time so that when I'm not thinking straight from all the toxins, I can actually follow my own protocol. So it's interesting. So I've been doing that. But I don't think, over the years, I've just felt like something, like it's not all the way out. Like something's intuitively, it's not good. And then I don't get paid for this, by the way. I just did a bunch of research and this is what I use. And there's a couple other
Right.
good
So,
brands
and
too.
you're talking specifically about heavy metal. So, that's where I'm saying that, there's a huge, huge, huge categories of different types of toxins. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kelly, why don't you introduce what zeolite is, right? So, we're understanding, what that compound's doing. And that is more specific towards, like heavy
Towards metal.
metals and things that are
Yeah.
um, able to
Yeah.
bind to zeolite.
Well, what's interesting is because the reason I mentioned it is because of what you were saying about the byproduct of detoxing is that these other systems work better because the energy isn't all going towards trying to package up and deal with the toxins and the metals and whatever types of, it just takes so much energy for the body, right? And so this, what the zeolite does basically is it's like aluminum silicate, which sounds weird, but it's like if you look at it in a microscope, it's like all these little kind of cage like structures. It'd be really cool if I could like bring it up. I should have thought of that ahead of time. But and when you have the powder, you've got different types of different sizes, and then heavy metals kind of come in contact, and then it's because of the ionic charges, it's kind of attracted to the zeolite, and then in about 6 hours, I think the research, like the different research and studies I was reading in the clinicals, it's basically in about 6 hours it's out of your body. So it's grabbing the toxins. But what I learned is that it favors some toxins over others. So if it favors lead over mercury. So some people can have these major detox reactions when they're first doing it, because if it's picking up mercury and then it comes across lead, it will actually apparently drop, and because of the ion exchange, it'll drop the mercury and pick up the lead. So then the mercury, which was conveniently packaged by your liver to be stored in a safe place and not all like circulating around your bloodstream, right? Like our liver sends heavy metals to the bones, which is brilliant. This is so smart, right? Because it's like that's where we need the heaviness. It's so cool. But then when you start to release these things, you can't have too many going around in the bloodstream at once, or else you can get into big trouble. And that's why some people that do these fasts, that have been living a toxic lifestyle, they go blind. I don't know if you heard about this, but like, I mean, people die. Like you have to really know what you're doing. You have to eat healthy first before you even try to do a really serious
and
detox.
that's where I'd like to actually back up, because you put
Yeah,
up this,
same here.
yeah,
Yeah,
zeolite, where
let's start
the
there.
Yeah.
the
Yes.
basis honestly is eating, unprocessed foods. I would say getting rid
Mhm.
of gluten and dairy. Honestly, I think they're just
Yep.
too inflammatory for most of the population, certainly the population that I'm working with. But it really is eating clean, lots and lots of green leafy vegetables and colorful vegetables, because of these abilities, like you're saying, these electrons and uh, sequestering all these free radicals and really helping the body on a most basic level of just trying to manage the toxin exposure. And then we get to some of these very specific types of detoxing protocols. But like you said, people can go through some pretty drastic negative reactions when their
Yeah.
body's suddenly flooded with it in the bloodstream. And so, it is kind of thinking about, okay, first, get that basis, because you don't want to have a bunch of like a strong zeolite, which, it's a nanopolymer, it's crossing the cell membranes, it is going into the cells where sometimes it's sequestered and stuck there, and we're trying to get it out of the cell. But once it comes into the bloodstream, you could be exhibiting or feeling these negative reactions, because suddenly now it's in the bloodstream where it was kind of like sequestered off in some sort of cell. So that it is kind of important to kind of say, okay, but you don't want foods to add to that detox, because you're eating a lot of processed foods and commercially processed foods, right? So let's just
Mhm.
kind of clarify as to what processed foods is. And because that way you're otherwise you get into these stronger detox protocols, and you're going to be detoxing all the regular things with from your negative thoughts to eating crappy food. You don't want to be doing that. And
Yeah.
so
So,
zeolite, again, I would also say that too. that's not something I would go to first. I'm definitely, baseline, hit the foods first, and really, really think about how your foods enable your natural detox pathways to work. And then there's special cases, like you said, where you get a mercury overload from uh, fillings is a popular one, industrial areas, lead, aluminum, all these things where the body is not getting it out fast enough.
Yeah,
Um,
like I would say before anyone, I have a lot of clients that want to come to me and say, "Oh, I want to do a cleanse or a detox." And first I'd say, "Why? What are you cleansing from?" And then we look at the body. Like I don't want a cancer patient who's recently diagnosed to do like a massive cleanse. I would say first build up the system. Make sure you are on like a whole foods diet, really get as healthy as you can with your whole foods. Make sure you're eating enough fiber and doing all the things that are supporting the elimination process. Because you could do all these things like zeolite or do fermented foods, but then you're going to have like all this toxic offloading. And how's that going to get out of the body? If you're not having skin brushing, if you're not doing saunas, like there has to be an elimination pathway that people might not be thinking about, right? So
yeah, and poop's my
can we talk
favorite
about that?
eliminate. Yeah,
Let's
poop's my
talk
favorite
about that.
elimination pathway.
Yeah.
And
So let's
exercise, sweating.
and exercise.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about like how we can support colon health and the digestive pathway, because that's probably going to be, aside from skin, respiratory exchange, that's going to probably be the most important thing. So are people having at least one bowel movement a day?
Yeah,
Are
and
you?
honestly, I
Are you
wouldn't
having two
even
or
do
three? I mean, a
exactly,
lot of people don't,
right, and I wouldn't
right?
even do a zeolite or activated charcoal or all these things that are out there unless you're having at least one bowel movement a day, because you're not eliminating the toxins, and so
Yeah.
and that's just
Yep.
kind of creating this
Yeah.
stockpile, and so it is like pooping ideally twice a day. But like you said, a lot of people aren't there, and so getting the foods so that your system is mechanically working well, so that you're
Mm-hmm.
not bombarding it with some of these heavier, maybe stronger detox kind of protocols.
Yeah, but
um
that, Kelly, could be great. Like if someone is really like doing the work and really having a professional mindset or having somebody next to them to support them, that could be good. But it could be dangerous, I suppose. You're saying
oh
somebody
Well,
well,
going,
not even suppose it
I'll
can
just tell
be.
you my
it
personal
can be.
experience.
Yeah.
So my intuition said I still have mercury going on, right? And of course, you know me, I'm eating healthy. I'm doing all the fiber.
Did you
I'm
get
doing
your
all
amalgam fillings taken
the stuff.
out?
Yeah.
That's what
You
you're
did?
saying. Yeah, you were getting
Oh,
that
I
closer.
missed that. Sorry. I know. Ah!
So I've been doing, for years I've been eating really healthy, but still I felt like there's still something going on in my body. Like something's not quite right. And then I was like, I wonder if it's that, because that was just a couple years ago that I
Hmm.
had all that done. And it really did affect me. And so what's interesting is when I started the zeolite, when I first started, I was actually getting like little bits of headaches and
Mm-hmm.
feeling a little bit off. Like things were getting stirred up, but
Hmm.
now it's so interesting because now I can do like 3 times the dose and I just feel amazing. Like, and so that tells me, with my own personal experience, that tells me that, okay, I probably am doing pretty good. I probably got most of the toxins out and it's just inert at this point. It's just gonna, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting, like to just, I'm my own personal guinea pig in a lot of ways.
Right.
And but it's there's so many possibilities, right? There's so many, and the reason I didn't choose bentonite clay or activated charcoal is because, well, activated charcoal takes out your vitamins and your minerals and your good minerals, and bentonite clay dehydrates, right? Zeolite, the water just kind of passes right through. So I was like, all right, I'll just try, I'll try zeolite, and it worked. But I'm also eating a lot of fiber, right? I have, if I like I that is the main thing. What you were saying
Right.
is so true. And just a little trick for any of you in the audience that are tuning in or tuning into the recording. Um, how about if it's okay with you, Jill and Katie, what if we each kind of give a couple simple tricks that we do to make sure, even when we're really busy, to make sure we're getting enough fiber? Because really, fiber is our first detox, right? It is like the more, I mean, all the studies show the cultures who eat high fiber diets, they have way less disease. And we know
Mm-hmm.
that increases poop. it increases motility. It's so good. And of course, not everybody can have fiber. There's some people that their guts are just so out of whack and out of balance. They try to eat fiber and they're in pain. So, you know, I not it's you know not everybody nowadays can have super high fiber diets, but if if you are in pain, you can. There's things you can do, right? And eventually, you can eat these fiber rich foods. So one of the things I do, besides making sure I always have something raw and a raw sort of salad or vegetable with every meal, is that I have things on hand that if I just want to eat something or need to munch something, that they're fiber rich. So my favorite thing is celery, because you can have as much as you want. It won't cause any allergy. Like, there's no reaction. Like, every human, pretty much most humans, can have as much celery as they want. Super high in fiber. You get the nitric oxide, so it's really good for circulation, really good for libido, and it tastes really good. It's kind of like a neutral vegetable, and it cleans your gut. So there's mine.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, the liver and the kidney are, taxed the most with removing toxins once it's in the bloodstream, and then, like you said, the GI tract. So I love the fiber thing, and I like smoothies. My pond sludge. Like lots and lots of green leafies. I like the kale, the parsley. If I had to say one of my favorite detox foods is parsley, beet greens, lemon, and milk thistle. Just really, putting them, but I love variety in the smoothies. I love kind of creating challenges where, seeing if people can do a 30 ingredient smoothie, and that's obviously all raw. And, it's helping with the digestive system in terms of eliminating toxins, or the GI system with all that fiber. But it's also, a lot of these polyphenols and flavonoids. I just love how they scavenge some of these, electrons, because, I'm always the one at the quantum level. It's like, you just think about energy production and electron flow, and you're just trying to optimize that energy flow with your foods. And a lot of these rugged green leafies and colorful vegetables are going to be fantastic for just helping, get rid of those free radicals. And like, if you think about cancer and how these things start, it's really the environment these cells are in. So you want to create a nice, beautiful, healthy environment for those cells. And what better way to do that is through good food and good thoughts. But those are my 4 top ones: parsley, beet greens, milk thistle, and then lemon with the rind in the smoothie. So, people call it my green sludge, pond sludge, grass clippings, whatever. But that's just my favorite foods. How about you, Jill?
Don't really put grass clippings in there. No.
Well, no, I like wheatgrass, alfalfa grass.
Wheatgrass, but not real grass.
Yeah, well, not like
Wheatgrass
traditional.
is real grass, Jill.
Okay.
Yeah, and alfalfa grass.
You have to pulverize it.
Wheatgrass, that's mostly what's out there.
It's true. It totally gives you that high feeling. Okay, so my things, like, I like the actual beet. So I like roasted beets. Broccoli sprouts are really high in sulforaphane, which is an antioxidant. That's really great for detoxification. And I'm actually into food. I'm not a big smoothie person, quite frankly, or a juicer. I spend like 2 hours cooking every day. So I make a huge stir fry, usually every single morning, starting with onions and garlic, because that has quercetin, that has good sulfur, which is good for all these detoxification pathways in the liver. So I like to eat whole foods. I mean, I will have a juice or a smoothie, but I'm just not into that, which is really interesting. The 3 of us have very different perspectives, which is really cool and interesting. So I like to have that, and broccoli, carrots, dark leafy greens, like you guys also mentioned, and sprouts. So I brought my little sprout jar. I just got this here. It's really pretty. And here are what broccoli seeds look like. There we have it. So you put these little seeds in this jar. Here we go. And you add water. You let that soak for a day. And then you just dump the water out once or twice a day. And then this will fill up with broccoli sprouts. You can do that with alfalfa sprouts too. So that's just another way of getting these amazing antioxidants that are coming from our foods. So that's what I recommend. Plus some supplements. Like, in particular, I like N-acetylcysteine. So
N-acetylcysteine, yeah, I mean, so first of all, tell what N-acetylcysteine is, but I have quite a few experiences with N-acetylcysteine, good and bad, with
Okay.
clients, and
Okay,
it's
interesting.
interesting about how people respond differently to that supplement, which is
Right.
now being very, very heavily controlled
Yeah.
in the
And
so it's hard to get
mhm.
that now.
Yeah, so I have a supply of these supplements. You can always order them from me. But here's my N-acetylcysteine. So N-acetylcysteine
And that was
is
pure
based
encapsulation?
pure encapsulation. I like this brand.
Yeah, it's good.
So it's not
Uh,
pure N-acetylcysteine, they have something else in there, right?
I have to look at my glasses. This might be pure N-acetylcysteine. Well, okay, sometimes you want B vitamins to go with that as a precursor
Right,
to
and that's where, you know,
N-acetylcysteine,
because
but this doesn't have it in
N-acetylcysteine
it. No, this is just straight N-acetylcysteine. So basically, it's just a protein. It's an amino acid. Cysteine is an amino acid and it is the precursor to glutathione. Glutathione is our body's main antioxidant, and it's readily um, built up, but it's also readily eliminated from your body. So we want to eat these high cysteine foods, protein foods. But if you're not eating enough of those foods, you can always supplement with these things.
Bone broth
So
Okay.
has all
yeah,
three precursors to glutathione in one. But if
okay,
you're vegetarian, you
yeah,
could do fish bone broth though if you're pescatarian.
right,
Well, broccoli, avocado, asparagus, those are, contain glutathione, especially if
yes,
it's eaten raw, right? Because the heating will
yeah,
break down glutathione.
yep,
But yeah, cysteine is a precursor. Um, so cysteine is an amino acid, right? So which is the
mm-hmm,
building block of proteins. But cysteine can also be excitatory, right? So, a
Mm.
lot of my research with the excitatory amino acids,
mm-hmm,
you've got, glutamate, cysteine, aspartate
yes,
that can be sometimes excitatory.
right,
And it's interesting with the
that's true.
N-acetylcysteine, it's sometimes a very individual sort of thing where I always, always, always recommend with people taking supplements is start off slowly to see how your body is responding. Because
With any
N-acetylcysteine
supplement, yeah,
with
for
anything,
sure. Yeah,
even,
agreed.
zeolite or whatever, um,
100%.
because you never know how your body's going to respond. And I have had a few clients that had such excitatory reactions with
Hmm,
N-acetylcysteine that was
Mm.
recommended by their doctor and such. But I kind of like getting the cysteine, which is a sulfur containing amino acid, from whole food
for
proteins and seeing
sure.
how far, that
100%.
goes. And
Yes.
you can look at these metabolic reports that look at glutathione and glutathione potentially oxidation or pyroglutamate, what's going on with that glutathione. Are you low? Are you needing more support in that particular detoxification pathway? But it is interesting that N-acetylcysteine is now being heavily, 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 heavily
Hmm,
controlled
I know,
because the
right?
psychiatric field is highly recommending that for mood disorders. And
Hmm,
because it's being
hmm,
recommended so much for patients of these, of psychiatrists, the FDA wants to regulate it. Where you and I, we're all saying for glutathione, that, and I do see it improve some people's mood,
hmm.
that's, especially if they're overcome with inflammation and toxins and such. But that's why it's being really heavily controlled. So if you are interested in doing N-acetylcysteine, it's almost like you need to grab it off the shelves. If pure
Or we need
encapsulate,
to rally our government and ban those kind of things because I know it's not regulated as a drug, but also there's like 4 to 6,000 toxic chemicals on the planet that the FDA does not regulate either
Yeah.
that are causing cancer. So the fact
right?
that they want to
So
take out amino acids, that
yeah,
is like total
yeah, it's
corruption as far as I'm concerned. I'm
totally
sorry, I don't want to yell
right.
into
No,
my microphone, but it
but
makes
yeah,
me
no, it's totally just, like, what the heck? Why would you regulate that over, like, mercury in
right.
the air or aluminum in the soils or whatever? But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more
So
there. But
that
it
just
is
it's just a testimony to how good that stuff is then. If the government wants to
Yeah. Yeah.
regulate it more.
well, and probably the whole supplement industry is at some point is going to be a little bit more regulated because it is a little bit of a free for all in terms of the claims and such that people are making. So, going back to the whole food principles is always again a good place to start. But
Right.
there's
Yeah. And
things that you can look at. What's that?
Betalain's the main antioxidant in beets. Studies have shown that it increases
Touching.
your glutathione levels. Of course, when you
Absolutely.
ferment those beets,
Yep.
um, if you send that, if you take beet juice and you ferment that, you ferment it, right? You
Hmm.
send those two. You have the unfermented and you have the fermented. The fermented one is going to have 4 times the antioxidants as the
Amazing.
unfermented.
Yeah, so I think we all agree that whole foods are definitely the way to go, right? To have enough water, you want to have half your body weight in water
But
in ounces a day.
in an emergency situation, like something happens, like you come across some gnarly disease or toxin or just some mass amount that's flooding through your body, it's good to have those things on hand, right? Like
Sure.
zeolite or
Charcoal.
NaC or charcoal or yeah, it's I
Yeah.
feel like, okay, this is my emergency room, like cabinet. I don't
Hmm.
ever hardly use these things, but every now and then I know they're there. Like radiation, if there's some kind of crazy like radioactive fallout somewhere and it's coming to us, like what I have these massive amounts of iodine on hand. And then of course the
Hmm.
zeolite has been shown to help with that as well. So yeah, just having these things in your, parking lot, so to speak, that you don't, the car that you don't drive, but it's there if you need to get away.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think like, if you were mentioning GI symptoms and that, if somebody is having and struggling with, whatever GI symptom, like you said, if fiber is causing pain, that's a red flag. Why is that? If there's not a physical explanation like diverticulitis or something, it typically is an overgrowth in the small intestine. I mean, it really is the most common reason why people would experience pain, bloating if they're consuming a lot of fiber or a high fiber diet. And what a lot of people do to manage that is they stop eating fiber, which is exactly what you don't want to do because you're starving your large intestine. So I do like thinking about, the intestinal symptoms is kind of like help guide what detox program might work and in maybe a phased approach. Um,
Hmm.
because
And
if you're not
Katie, a lot of those people with those issues can have fiber if it's really, really well cooked, like in a stew or a bone broth, right? But then raw, they're not quite ready. Like they've got to build up to that. First, it's like balancing the microbiome and once
sorry.
and then it's like a process. I think we lost you for a little bit. I don't know if you were able to hear me, but I was basically yeah, there's this process rebuilding the gut and microflora and
And
your
digestive enzymes to make sure that people
that
can
just
even
yeah,
digest the stuff, that they're
yes,
having
it
enough
all takes
water to
time.
even push the fiber through.
Yeah.
And not all fiber is equal, right? There's soluble fiber and insoluble fiber.
Well,
So
and
there
for
are
the
different
enzymes,
kinds.
Bill,
So
for the enzymes, just blending, like some of my clients, what I've had them do is just because raw is so important, but then they're just not yet at the stage where they can handle that much raw. And so what they'll do is they'll blend the vegetables and fruits or whatever in
hmm.
a blender with some water and then pass it through a strainer
Hmm.
because the you're still getting some of that soluble fiber right
Hmm.
through the holes, but the coarse fiber that is really impossible, like some of them they just can't tolerate it. It's just
Right. Yeah, it's painful. They have
Well, and that's
cramps
but
and
it's
gas.
get it's why. That's where I'm like you probe into why because honestly their system's not working, right? If you're not taking insoluble fiber, you're starving the large intestine. And so
yeah,
it really is kind of like getting to the root cause as to why that person may not be tolerating those. Now, of course, that somebody could have a sensitivity to beets and they flush in their face and they can't eat beets. Okay, fine. For whatever reason, the beets aren't working for you, you switch to a different food. But if they have to remove insoluble fiber as a category,
yeah.
red flag. Something's got
Well,
to
it's
be,
Right.
usually
done to reset that.
it's usually like IBS and things like that. And once those resolve, once things come back into balance, then they can start to reintegrate the fiber. And then
Of
eventually
course.
they're eating
Hopefully.
salads and it's fine, but there's this period of adjustment. It can take a while. I mean, but the most amazing things, like for anyone tuning in, don't ever lose hope because studies have shown that in just 3 days, you can actually completely change your microbiome balance and population. Like it's amazing. It can happen and your cravings can change in just 3 days. Like everyone says it takes
Hmm.
21 days. So just 3 days of doing a reset can make a huge difference in what you're going to experience, and how you're going to feel and what you're going to be able to eat. And
Yeah, well, let's talk about leaky gut because so one of the reasons why people can't handle fiber is because of leaky gut, and that's when there's perforations in the gut lining. And that's when undigested food matter is passing through the gut into the bloodstream. So that is like a physiological issue. So that does need to be repaired. And there are those foods that you can do, with the slow congee or really making mush and taking the fiber out first
yeah,
to heal the gut.
yeah,
So first you want to heal the gut then you can incorporate these other foods into it, and then you can start your detoxification stuff. But first, what's causing the leaky gut in the first place? Like our
Inflammation.
people, inflammation. And so then where is the inflammation coming from? Is it from their laundry detergent? Is it their toxic thoughts? Is it their pesticides? Is it the pharmaceuticals that they're having every day? Is it they're drinking Diet Coke and then they're going to go on a detox the next day?
Is it the percentage of microorganisms that are overgrowing that are supposed to be kept in check that aren't, and they're
Right.
secreting toxins?
Yeah. And so once
all
a
of the
person,
above.
Right.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
really frustrating once a person gets to that point because they do feel, traumatized
And
by
honestly,
that.
I even see more than fiber. I mean, honestly, leaky gut's going to leak everything. And so that, when you've got like, digestive proteins or, peptides going in, that's where you're getting these autoimmune conditions, which
Yep.
then can be very, very, very challenging to reset the body because now your
Mhm.
immune system is involved with thinking something's toxic because it leaked through. And, so healing the gut, definitely is key, and that's where these people get into fasting approaches, honestly, is because you're trying to reset some of the give your GI tract a break to some degree, whether it's intermittent fasting, which I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting. I think the longer fasting approaches get to be somewhat drastic. But just giving your digestive tract a break to kind of soothe and heal and not have a lot of those things leaking through. But boy, when you get to the autoimmune conditions, it's a lot more of a, talk about patience and persistence and discipline, to try
Mhm.
to bring your immune system in line with, health. And that's, yeah, that autoimmune condition is quite tough. Well, actually, Kelly,
Yeah.
that's how you kind of started your whole journey with your husband, is the autoimmune component.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
funny because I never even that's what got me into this, and I forgot to even say that in the beginning when we were introducing.
It was an autoimmune. Do you guys ever use L-glutamine for the
hate
gut?
it, hate it,
You
hate
don't
it,
like
hate it, hate it.
glutamine?
Nope,
It's in bone
nope,
broth.
nope, nope.
I do bone. I do a lot of bone broth. Um,
I like
and I do
licorice
collagen.
too. DGL is really good too for
Yeah, I
gut.
like licorice root and slippery elm and just like teas, whether, you're doing bone broth with a lot of herbs or teas with a lot of herbs. I love the licorice root
Those are
because it's very
mucilaginous. Yeah, like the
right.
marshmallow, because you want to soothe the intestinal lining, right?
Yes,
And we
the
talk about healthy
mucosal
fats,
lining.
right? The
Yes.
mucosal lining. Didn't you want to address that, Katie? You said something about oiling our system. Should
Oh
Right,
we
yeah.
exactly. The
jump into the
mucosal lining.
fats?
I love licorice root and, like you said, the marshmallow root and, just kind of herbal approaches to kind of soothing, or, like the bone broth, but the
And the
glutamine.
bone broth,
And,
right?
I mean, some of these medical doctors are, recommending like 10 to 20 grams of glutamine for leaky gut, which has become quite the the loosey goosey term for,
Oh, you don't
like you
like the
said,
glutamine because of the glutamic acid aspect is going to be an excitotoxin, but not
it's
to
going to be,
everybody.
um, but for most people at that level.
For
So,
some
from
people,
10 to 20 grams, you're starting to activate your nervous system with that triad of glutamine, glutamate, and GABA. And, glutamine is feeding cancer cells. It's not something you want to do high doses of, and especially with a chronic inflammatory condition. I mean, so there might be lower levels, but 10, 20 grams, you are definitely getting
yeah.
into a realm there that's not safe.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
and it is the glutamate.
and also we talked about. I mean, honestly, what do I? The simplest way I feel like if someone's not familiar with all these details, the simplest thing I feel like we could leave people is if it's
Food.
processed, if it's made in a lab, if it's isolated, if it's an isolated compound, you probably want to stay away from it. If you can use wholesome foods and wholesome ingredients that have all the rich cofactors and all the synergistic compounds, that's what's going to bring your body back into balance. Like I said, sometimes in an emergency, yeah, sure, you'll have that iodine pill or whatever, right? Or that, but really, if it's not like a life or death situation, why not just get it from these amazing, beautiful, nurturing whole foods that have all these other benefits, right? And the more we practice that, the more we're like, okay, I'm gonna go for the natural thing and not go for the processed thing. What are you doing? You're getting more nutrients, you're getting more fiber, you're getting more wholesome ingredients, that you're getting less toxins, you're getting less of all of these things that could could interfere with your cellular and metabolic activity, because like our cells aren't designed to have a huge dose of liposomal vitamin C flooding into our body. We're not designed for that.
Mhm.
Our
Yeah.
bodies
Foods.
are designed to eat an orange, and you eat dandelion greens, and you eat this thing, and then you get the vitamin C and all these other things. Like
Right. I
Mhm.
and so this
totally
whole
agree.
one
We
fits
all
Totally.
fits all
agree. We
Yeah.
agree.
philosophy
And it's
is
always a good place to start to see how, what your body's doing and responding to just whole foods, lots and lots of vegetables, particularly I love the leafy greens, but and just starting there, and seeing how your body responds, and then kind of getting more personalized, which I love, data and metabolic data to kind of help guide the
yeah.
personalized sort of approach and figuring out, what people are, not responding well to, or, need more extra support. It sounds
Mhm.
good. All right. Should
Yeah.
we wrap this up?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to finish up on some details just to leave people, because I think we say like, oh, eat a lot of this, eat a lot of that, but what does that really mean? So the recommendations for fiber are 25 to 35 grams a day. So if you
Nice.
eat at least 5 to 7 servings of vegetables, that would be that. 3 servings of fruit, and other sources of fiber are grains, whole grains. I know Katie's not into the wheat, so stick to brown rice, quinoa, things with the hull on them, whole
Right. And
oats,
like oat
like
groats,
not
not
processed,
rolled oats.
whole
Yeah.
groats. Yeah, right. So you want the wholest form, and that's why you're going to get the fiber. You're actually going to have to chew food, and you're going to have to swallow it and eat it, and then you're going to poop it out, and it's going to be really great. You're going to detoxify. It's going to be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And
Happy
then
pooping, everybody.
water. Yeah. So food, all, yeah, eat those amounts.
Nice. Yeah.
Make yourself
That's a
healthy.
nice, yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Just to,
Well, thank
Great.
you, Kelly, for setting us all up again, and look
Yeah.
forward to our next discussion.
Great. All
Fantastic.
right. Well,
yeah.
happy spring cleaning, girls.
Yeah.
Happy
cleaning.
spring cleaning. And so, but we want to leave everybody really quick with a challenge. So the challenge this week is to drink half your body's weight in water. So whatever your body weight, so do that in ounces. Are you doing that? Okay, couple liters. And also see if you can get yourself to 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Okay,
Yeah.
and
I
then
like that
comment
challenge.
in the
Nice.
post and let us know what kind of fruits and vegetables you're eating, and we'll check in next week.
Sounds good.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.